Welcome to the 716 Sports Blizzard talk show. Today we have our guest Chamberlain, and I have my co-host Logan, and we're gonna talk some NLL lacrosse and the Bandits.
And some Nighthawks probably too in there. Chamberlain is a big Nighthawks fan, so
just a slight season ticket holder, just a little bit.
I didn't know you were a season
Yeah.
ticket holder.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I've been a season ticket holder under the radar because I technically also cover the team, but it's a long story. We'll get into it. Don't worry.
Okay, gotcha. So, Nighthawks, how are they off to? They just lost to the Bandits twice. Have they won a game yet?
Yes. Well, thank God this is today. Thank God this is today because they just beat the Georgia Swarm and forced Brett Dobson out in the third quarter. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. I can't lie. There's some offensive woes going on right now. I mean, the defensive side of things is all very injury based right now. Rylan Hartley went immediately to IR at the beginning of the season, putting Riley Hutchcraft in goal, and that's just Hutchie is proved already to be actually, statistically speaking, one of the best goalies in the league so far this season with save numbers and everything like that. But you guys probably know the type of personality that Rylan Hartley is. I know I got to see it like literally every single Saturday for 3 years. And just the character that he brings to the team is almost more vital than what he does on the floor. And what he does on the floor is play like a top 5 goalie in the NLL. So it's definitely a big change there. Also, just before Christmas, Dan Coates went on to IR, their captain on defense. They've gone through the whole beginning of the season without Mitch Ogilvie. A lot of changes on that back end, just with random injuries and guys coming in from free agency like Chad Tutton, Ian Lord. But then you also get guys like Josh Medeiros off of the that expansion draft from Panther City.
Yep.
But yeah, right now I'm super dialed into the Rochester. Last year at this time, if you asked me anything about the Buffalo Bandits, I would have been able to tell you everything because I worked for them. But also now I think I can give you guys a little bit of nice insight on just some general how things operate. Not like I have inside information to give you guys, but I can just kind of give you that from the other side perspective.
Yeah. I did want to speak a little bit about Hartley because a couple, maybe it was a year or two ago, I went to a game out in Rochester, and Hartley basically stole the show. And I think he's a very athletic goalie. I'm not like super into like the advanced stuff. I'm not like I have more lacrosse knowledge than like an average person. But like I'm not like super in depth into it like you are. But at least I think Hartley, losing him has definitely been. It definitely hasn't helped. Granted, Hutchcraft I think has been fine, but I think losing a guy like Hartley makes a huge difference in Rochester's season, at least to start.
Yeah, I mean, the Buffalo comp there is Dominic Hasek. I mean, just the way he plays. I think if you asked anybody that has ever even seen 30 seconds worth of Dominic Hasek playing goalie, and you watched Rylan Hartley, you would say, "Oh yes, he has the same death wish that Dominic Hasek has." I think that's kind of the main. You get it if you watch them both play. You completely understand. I mean, the last goalie that I've seen to fight in the NLL also. And that was when he was a backup coming into
Hartley,
a game.
you said?
That was Hartley in that Albany Rochester game.
Oh, wow.
That brawl like 3 years ago now, I think. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I want to give a quick shout out to Brady. He's one of my old friends from TikTok way back then. Shout out to you, Brady. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Rob, do you have any questions for Chamberlain? Anything you want to ask about regarding Rochester?
How many goals does Connor Fields have including today's game?
Not enough. Period.
Yeah.
So the thing I think it's the common theme right now with a lot of guys in the NLL is like those strong lefties is one, defenses are starting to key in on ball dominant lefties a lot more just because you get players like Josh Byrne, Zach Mans. There's a million of, or not a million, every team now is trying to have and copy what Buffalo has in a dominant on ball lefty. And Buffalo, for a little bit there, had a nice little surplus of it. But for those of you that know,
Yeah.
Connor Fields and Josh Byrne don't fit on the same team because there is one spot for a dominant on-ball lefty. That's Connor Fields kicked Holden Catoni out of that spot when he came to Rochester also. But he has started to really step into the, if you're going to cover me that aggressively, I'll just take my 8 assists and run with it. And so that's nice. But for me, as someone who watches as much field lacrosse as I do box lacrosse, those secondary assists mean absolutely nothing to me. So it's really kind of frustrating when I don't see him doing what I think he should, which is he should be a walking hat trick. There's absolutely no reason for him not to be. And I think that's one of the interesting things too, with the way that this year has now developed. After 2 years ago, they let go of Gavin Prout, who's their offensive coordinator. He's the 10th all-time leader in goals, I believe, in the NLL, or points, one of the two. And so they had him for 1 year, and then they let him go. And not that the offensive production directly impacted by that went down, but now having Kyle Calais, who's more so a video coach, helping these guys as someone that's their age versus being a former player that's coaching them, giving them plays to run and different things like that. I just think there's a lack of options right now for how this offense can create goals and how they can get Connor open. They're just giving him the ball and letting him try to find a way. And I mean, any coach will always just tell you they need to create more chaos in the middle, but they've got plenty of guys who can create chaos in the middle and do create it. They have to figure out the isolated situations and solve those problems as they go.
Yeah. I feel like Connor Fields is kind of, at least when he was in Buffalo, very much is overshadowed by 3 forwards who are better than him. At least Tahoka is arguable.
2. At the time, Tahoka wasn't. Now, actually, no. We can talk about Tahoka if you want to, but
yeah. Well, I mean,
I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess what I was trying to say was at the time, when Fields was in Buffalo, we already had Dave Smith, Josh Byrne, who might be 1 and 2 behind Jeff T probably in terms of best forwards in box lacrosse. And
that's a modest thought, I'll be honest.
Yeah. But I guess Fields kind of got lost in terms of like, what was his role in Buffalo. Like he was great when he was here, but now I think he's in Rochester. I think it kind of feels like the offense revolves around him. And right now, Rochester's 1 and 3.
Yeah, so Rochester's 1 and 4.
1 and 4.
And that's the other thing about the fact that the NLL is just so crazy sometimes. The Bandits are 3-0. They've played 3 games so far this season.
Yeah, and Rochester's already played 5.
Rochester's already played 5, and and that's also how you run into like these types of swings, right? Where you're losing games in that way. And actually, as I say that, Rochester's 2 and 4. They played 6 games. They're actually already a third of the way through the season. The way that most NLL players gauge their year is by 6 games because it's normally an 18-game schedule, and you go 6, 6, and 6, and then the playoffs ideally is 5 or 6 games if you're going all of the way. That's how the Bandits usually look at a season, is 4 quarters, pretty much.
Yeah.
Rochester's already through a quarter of their season, and the Bandits have barely even started. Like, it's wild the way that all just kind of works out. I can't lie. It's interesting.
Yeah. Richard, thank you for tuning in. Good to see you. Robbie, you have any questions regarding Rochester, regarding Buffalo, regarding Tocanatico? Go ahead.
Well, I will be in attendance for this game coming up between Buffalo and Toronto.
You're in for a treat, buddy. Let me tell you what.
How is Toronto doing this season?
So I can give you the nice in deep low on Toronto. So I work for a company called First Line Sports Analytics. We do deep and advanced stats for all of the games that certain teams in the NLL pay them for and give them those stats. And for the first 3 weeks of the season, I was covering Toronto. They are injured. They are still reeling from the fact that they don't have Dan Dawson on offense. Still, 2 years later. They thought that they could just go out and get Mark Matthews in that trade and it would be the immediate replacement because in locker rooms sense, he is that replacement, but he doesn't replace the type of production that Dan Dawson brought the team. And Tom Schreiber broke his collarbone, and all of these guys that play summer lacrosse are literally running on like 3 weeks of a break. So, he's hurt. TD Erlin's hurt. They don't have a face-off specialist right now. They don't have Captain America, which ironically plays for Toronto, right?
Yeah.
They are Josh Dawick heavy right now, which just doesn't make any sense to anyone other than his dad, who's the owner of the Toronto Rock. And I mean, obviously you have Nick Rose. He's a great goalie. That defense holds down the fort, so you're not going to score over 15 goals a game. You don't need to against Toronto right now because they struggle to put up more than 8. So, I honestly think if you saw Rochester Buffalo, ask yourself, how does this game go if Rochester takes 25 less shots?
I mean, I think
and remember, Matt Vince like stood on his head in that game, right? He had literally a single or a franchise record in saves in a game in that performance. So think about that game,
which in lacrosse is unbelievable.
Yeah. So think about if Rochester took 25 less shots. That's what my prediction would be for how this game will go. Now, given that doesn't qualify for the get up that every team has for Buffalo, but obviously Rochester didn't have that get up. So I guess we'll see,
Yeah. But, Toronto, they're just reeling right now. I guess I didn't realize how many injuries they had. I feel like Nick Rose is kind of like the superstar player that they have. But with all the injuries, it's just, I guess if I were to say one thing, Toronto and Buffalo have a very heated rivalry, and there's always a fight. It feels like always a fight or two in the game. So that's something. If I were Robbie, I'll be looking forward to because those teams go at it and they go at it hard.
That's a good point, and I would say the thing though that I find interesting with this Buffalo team is for sometimes I wonder who's going to be the one to fight because sometimes they get a little during early parts of last season they would get a little bit soft, but now I think Dylan Robinson's hopping right in and he's throwing hands. I think Paul Dawson's hopping right in there and he's throwing hands. And I think Paul Dawson will do it against Toronto literally any day of the week. So because for a fact that Dan Dawson's going to be at this game watching it because his family is that whole family is from the greater Toronto area. And when Buffalo plays Toronto and little brother's in the game, you go watch it just like he did last year. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see number 6 drop the gloves for sure. He's got some good flow this year too. Dang. Paul Dawson, that's a good jersey to buy. Let me tell you what.
Really?
Paul Dawson's another guy that we should talk about. That's someone that when I saw that pickup last year, I was so excited because as someone covering the Bandits that had been covering the Nighthawks, it was just like, oh, this is a no-brainer. He was on the team with Vince for 2 of those championships. He knows how he is like having another captain on the team, and you guys already have Steve Priolo.
Yep.
And it's just like, okay, sweet. Also, we just have a second goalie on that team now because you just stick him right off of Vino's hip and call it a day, and it works.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I will say about Paul Dawson is he is 39. Has there been any signs of him slowing down at all?
Check his fingers. What does he have more of right now than he did 2 years ago?
Fingers, I guess.
Rings.
It's
yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, Rochester thought he was washed, right? Then they sent him to Colorado. He did an absolutely bubkiss. Then Buffalo gets him, and what does he do? Like, I know that through when he was acquired to the end of the regular season, he led the entire NLL in blocks. But that's just, I mean, he is literally a magnet for the ball. And I mean, the other thing to take note of is the untracked blocks that he had. I mean, he only was given like 2 per game, and I was counting multiple times that he would block a shot and there would be no tracked block on any stat line for anyone, just because it's such a less thought of category right now. It's growing every year, just like it is in hockey. Like every year, the number of shots that are blocked goes higher because guys are realizing that is what can get them on teams if they're crazy enough to do it. And so you're seeing it come up more and more and more. And that is what Paul Dawson is there to do. He's there to be a big dude. He's there to be left-handed, which is at this point for your having those lefty D guys is for some reason the right shot defenseman of the NLL. A 6'5" lefty D is a first line right shot defenseman in hockey. That's the equivalent, really. Yeah. And he's a goalie. He stands inside the crease and he literally gets down in a butterfly in the crease. Like you watch it next time. He goes he puts his hands like this and he drops down to a knee and he like makes himself 1, get out of Vino's sight line, and 2, block an entire half of the goal. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then Ethan O'Connor does the same thing in Buffalo.
We had him for a little bit, I believe.
You did. And so it's a Buffalo thing, but it's not a Buffalo thing. It's a Vino thing. And it started in Rochester under Mike Hazen, who is the one that actually implemented it first, with Paul Dawson off of Vino's hip in Rochester. Paulie won the last 2 in Rochester of the 3-peat with Vino. And then now Buffalo and Rochester run the same exact same exact penalty kill set. And it's a general defensive set in a lot of situations of just crowding in if you're getting crowded. It's really good. Sorry, guys. I get really into like the intricacies.
Oh, don't worry. You're all good. Robbie, do you have any questions you want to ask Chamberlain? I do have to get going. I got to pick up my brother from work, but I'll tune in. But Robbie, I'll let you go from here. Okay, sound good?
Sounds good.
Alrighty. So it was great speaking to you, Chamberlain. Very knowledgeable, and we'll be in touch soon. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Have a good one, guys.
Sounds good.
Good night, guys.
Have a good one, Logan.
So do you like what do you talk about lacrosse wise? Do you do articles or?
So like right now it's minimal. So when I was in college, it was all covering articles, podcast, video podcast, covering Rochester Nighthawks, Bandits, and then when I started working for the Bandits, I couldn't cover the NLL anymore on the podcast. So basically cut that back, and then when I graduated, ended the podcast, put it on a pause. It's gonna come back once I get completely situated with how many jobs I have right now, because I currently have like 4, and then a 5th that's getting added on because I'm trying to get back into covering Nighthawks right now. But yeah, so when it comes to my lacrosse work at the moment, it's just like advanced stat tracking. Like I'm making Excel sheets at the moment doing analytics. But then I'm also broadcasting. So I work for Hobart and William Smith colleges. So this spring we'll have some D1 lacrosse, and I'm pretty hyped for that. So yeah.
Do you see the Bandits making a three-peat of their championship?
So let's talk about this squad a little bit, because while I've now watched them play, I have multiple thoughts. One is that on paper, which is a terrible way to start any argument, right? This team is simply better than they were last year. Like, they just are. They've improved in different areas. Realistically, I still personally think that they could add a lefty attackman or a lefty forward, and it would benefit them quite a bit. Someone like a Larson Sundown. But that's like a super specific situation. Like, I think there are only ever very specific players around the NLL that should be thought of to get traded into that Bandits organization because of the type of culture that they have. And so it's a really, really short list in my mind, but you've got to find, I think this team needs to find basically a left-handed Kyle Buchanan. Because Kyle Buchanan is going to be gone in like a year, and they're going to need to fill that spot. And I think they should be filling it with a lefty, not with another righty at this point, because what I see as like the one downfall of this team at different times is that they're such a well-oiled machine right now, and they don't have a million options to do it with. And so by the time the postseason rolls around, there's going to be a whole lot of tape on how to play against this team. Like a whole lot of tape. And given, maybe nobody's going to figure it out, but there's a lot of really smart coaches around the National Lacrosse League. And if they are just running this, given Josh Byrne and Dane Smith are the best 2 players in the entire National Lacrosse League, period, right now, period. It's not an argument. Jeff Teat is an amazing player, but he's not as good as Josh Byrne and Dane Smith are in the NLL right now, period. So when it comes down to it, yes, they can go and bank on that a lot. But what happened 2 years ago for 4 games in the middle of the season? Josh Byrne goes down. What happens at just any point randomly for any team? Like, your star player goes down, or one of those forwards at any point goes down. It's a terrifying conversation that you're then having. The other situation that I also look to, and this is the third and final point of it, the one specific player for me that I've been watching personally like a hawk this season, in the sense of like his availability, is Ian McKay. Because Ian McKay has literally not stopped playing lacrosse since the preseason of last year. In 2023 is the last time that Ian McKay had more than a 2-week break from playing a competitive game of lacrosse against other men. Like, that's because he went NLL preseason, NLL season, NLL straight into PLL. Well, and actually, we can go even farther back real quick. You got Worlds in 2023 that happened that summer and PLL. Then he gets a month off, goes into the NLL preseason in 2023, plays through the NLL, plays all the way through the postseason because they win a championship in 2024, then goes into the PLL like a week late, immediately has games going on in the PLL, plays through the full PLL season, and then goes into the Box World Championships in September for Canada right after that. Oh, wait, I forgot. He also played for the Six Nations Chiefs for John Tavares in Canada for the MSL in between the PLL and the World Championship Box Series. And then he took 2 weeks and is now back playing in the NLL. Did he sleep at any point when that was all happening? Like, what? How many bruises are just like calluses on his body at this point? I don't know. He must be made out of leather. Like that's my takeaway at this point, because he has been going nonstop for like 18 months. All glory to him, though. You know what? Because I mean, he's also just an awesome dude. So I love you, McKay.
Who does Jeff Teat play for?
The Ottawa Black Bears now, no longer the New York Riptide. The fun new joke of the NLL is that these broadcasters keep talking about Ottawa like there's some brand new franchise, and like none of the things that the New York Riptide ever did happened anymore. And it's just really interesting to listen to. But yeah, their jerseys are pretty sick, though. I can't lie. The new Ottawa Black Bears jerseys.
Yeah, I like the colors. It kind of reminds me of like the 90s Sabres jerseys when they had the black and the red. And
yeah, definitely. It reminds me a little bit of the Florida State jerseys, just with that like the almost Aztec pattern that it's got going on it. It's pretty sick.
yeah. What do you like covering most about like box lacrosse or like lacrosse in general?
So when I started covering lacrosse in college, it was all college lacrosse that I was covering at first. And at the D3 level, lacrosse players are not the stereotypical lacrosse player. I mean, some of them are. Some of them, though, are not at all. And so I think one of the most interesting things throughout the entire journey of all of it was just seeing the different types of people that play the sport of lacrosse, because you get the American stereotype, which is your preppy rich kid who has parents that pay for everything, right? Then you have your Canadian stereotype, which is I just take this stick to work with me every day, and when I have 10 minutes to go hit the wall when I'm not doing manual labor, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to go play box and beat the crap out of guys in my free time because it's fun. And then you also have this other aspect in the United States where lacrosse is an avenue to like get an education, and then there's these certain guys that are just here like, to be honest, I didn't think I'd be able to play this sport and get paid for it, so here I am. And it's really cool to just see all of those different types of people interact. It's also cool to just kind of like slowly enter into the world. I mean, like going through my first season covering the Nighthawks was really interesting, just because like I had never talked to Mike Hazen before, but now I was literally having 2 conversations with him every single week for the entire season, maybe more than that if there were more media availabilities, to the point where I then, as a 20-year-old kid, is literally in like media with all of Rochester, and I get first question because he and I talked so much at that point that like he's like, yeah, what do you got for me, kind of a thing. And he knows that my questions are going to be both critical and that they're gonna pull something out of him other than just his coach speak. And if he gives me his coach speak, I'm gonna ask a follow up to get around it. I also went through the times where he just blatantly looked at me and said, "I'm not answering that," which was an interesting couple of times, I have to say. But yeah, it's the people are very interesting in the world of lacrosse. It's a surprisingly closed world. It's a small world, but it's also surprisingly one that you have to be constantly willing to learn if you want to get into, I would say. Yeah.
Well, before I end the show, where could I find your stuff, or my viewers find you at?
Yeah, so my best place to reach me probably would be Instagram, or my YouTube channel. My Instagram is Mr. Chamberlain B. Chamberlain is right there on my name attached to this, just MR at the beginning and a B at the end of that. Um, and I'm trying to check right now what my YouTube name is, because right now it's just all a couple of videos that I've had posted from different projects and different things that I've done. But I've my senior capstone for college was a documentary on 5 college lacrosse players. So vaguely applicable to the situation and everything here. But yeah. I mean, the real one is my Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I'll go on my story. And I'll also post different times when I'm broadcasting. So if you want to be able to tune in, listen to a random Tuesday night, you don't have anything to do, you want to listen to some high school basketball, I'm your guy. Plenty of random stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can find my Twitter or X at someone6blizzard, and also on Instagram, same name on there as well. Do you have anything to add before I end the show?
Well, I really hope that Rochester doesn't have to play against Buffalo in the playoffs. With that said, my hopes aren't necessarily that high that Rochester makes it to the playoffs, but this Bandits team is definitely in the driver's seat of the entire NLL, and I mean, they're cooking with gas over there. They know what they're doing, they care, and they know when they see a problem that they can solve it. And they'll do whatever they need to in that front office to make sure that the team is the best team in the NLL every single week that they go and compete. So yeah.
And
hey, Chris, how's it going? Long time no talk.
Yeah, that's Chris Pame. He actually introduced me into going into lacrosse talk also.
Yeah, I've seen Chris a couple times over the last couple of years at Oh, really? That's surprising. Okay. I'm gonna have to turn that one on, although I still have to watch more Wings and Saskatchewan. But yeah, I've known Chris for a couple of years now, actually. Thanks for having me on, Robbie.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can catch up later in the season.
Yeah, definitely. Every third of the way, or however often you want to talk about lacrosse. I got plenty more to go.
Thanks to everyone tuning in, and go Bandits and go Bills.